It's time to talk about June's Journey, a hidden object mystery game with a captivating detective story. When you're playing, you solve a mind-teasing mystery of the roaring 1920s while you dive into June's captivating quest to uncover a scandalous family secret and solve her sister's murder. It's mystery, it's danger, and it's romance, and you never know where the next chapter's gonna take you. If that wasn't fun enough, you get to customize your very own luxurious island estate. Seriously, I cannot stop playing. I am already on the 3rd chapter, and I just started recently. Join me back in time in the glamorous 1920s. June needs your help, detective. Download June's Journey for free today on iOS and Android.
Is your daily grind getting you down? A ThermoSpa's hot tub may be the solution. Just a few minutes under those powerful soothing jets, and all your stress seems to melt away, like you're lying on a cloud of bubbles. You'll not only feel better, but sleep better too. Call 877-861-4672 now, and for a limited time, save $1,250. Call 877-861-4672 or visit thermospas.com to schedule a free on-site assessment.
This podcast may discuss topics graphic in nature and possibly triggering to survivors. We value the safety and well-being of all of our listeners, so please practice personal discretion. Now, enjoy the show. Hey, I'm Paige.
And I'm Natalie.
We're the hosts of the Murder Diaries podcast.
We bonded over tacos and true crime after we matched on Bumble BFF.
You know, like any normal millennial using an app to meet new friends.
Every Thursday, we upload a new episode.
In each episode of the Murder Diaries, we tell true crime one story at a time. One week it's my turn.
And the next week it's mine.
You still think it's in my head, but I'm walking with the dead.
What you're about to hear is an interview with the Gits drummer, Steve Moriarty. In being in the Gits, Steve was also an extremely close personal friend to Mia Zapata. If you haven't listened to our episode on Mia Zapata, pause here, go listen to that episode, and then come back and enjoy the interview. We began speaking with Steve and building rapport kind of off record. And then once the conversation got more comfortable and we started learning really great things with Steve, we asked him for permission to go ahead and record our conversation, to which we are so lucky that he said yes. So when you hear the interview start, you're not going to hear the normal, hi, how are you, blah, 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 but you are going to immediately start hearing our conversation with him. And if Steve is listening today, thank you so much, Steve, for speaking with us. We feel so lucky that we got to learn so much from you.
And now enjoy our conversation with Steve.
Thank you so much for being willing to record with us, because I'm loving everything that I'm hearing, and the establishment of just the politics that were going on in the music scene, it sounds like. And you guys did play with Nirvana at like similar benefits and shows, right? Like,
yeah, we played with all those bands, and I liked them as people, but it was more like their fans and their record labels that were trying to be exclusive, and they're trying to bring like the Los Angeles music scene, competitive West Hollywood kind of hipster scene to Seattle. So that's where the record companies were, the big ones, and the independent record labels were all over the place. They're in Portland and Eastern Washington and Bellingham, Washington, and Seattle and Vancouver and small like college towns, mostly the indie labels, and then the Sub Pop was the big label there, and they wanted to control everything, and they wanted to control the shows, so they would put up more posters, and they would like their bands, and they would they would hype everything a whole lot. So we learned a lot from them about how to like promote the band, and we knew that like we had to have consistency in our marketing, and like the posters that came out needed to be cool, and then a record jet, all the art needed to be consistent and really strong. And
you were learning about the business side of things from them.
Yeah, we needed to, but we didn't want to learn about the business. We just wanted to, well, I guess we did. We didn't want to do business with anybody else. We just wanted to do it ourselves. And so we had to know how to do it ourselves.
Yep.
And that is business. Yeah, there's money involved. So we pooled our resources from gigs that we were able to get, and a couple $1,000, and we put out the record that featured all of our bands. So we would all have a vinyl release first come out. So that was the Rat House compilation, because we did all the meetings for it and all the organizing for it at the Rat House, and it was kind of our meeting place because we all lived there, or some of us, and we rehearsed in the basement of the house and shared gear down there. So we all sort of.
So what other bands besides the Gits? Because you're saying that
probably 7-Year Bitch, right?
7-Year Bitch. I mean, they used all our gear. We taught them how to play their instruments at the Rat House in the basement, and then
wow,
that's so cool.
Alcohol Funny Car. Sometimes the DC Beggars, they practice there all the time. The Gits practice there. Big Brown House, which was my other band, and Matt and I both played in Big Brown House and the Gits, so we were a rotating rhythm section. So having our stuff set up there, we all practiced there too. Cool. And that was the band that I moved out to Seattle with, along with the Gits. So it was like two bands really, Big Brown House and the Gits, and we were kind of like sibling bands, kind of like the MC5 and the Stooges in a way. So when we moved out there, we shared everything and we helped each other out. And we figured if we don't have the resources these other bands have with record labels and tour booking agents and managers and all that stuff, then, wow, there's strength in numbers, and we could do what they do between all 5 of us and share the resources, as opposed to just like each one trying to out hustle the other.
Smarter, not harder, right? That sounds very smart.
Working together.
A collective. But I'd seen the Crass Collective in England, because I did a year in England when I was in college, and the Crass Collective, they had their band Crass, but they all lived in a compound together that was like a no-go zone for police, but it was several blocks, and they had, they defended against any kind of attempts to dislodge them from their squats where they lived. Yeah. And they started a record company and put out Crass, but they also put out other bands, including Bjork's first record, Kukul.
Wow.
Okay.
And they had Crass Records was the label. So we kind of fashioned it after them, even though they were more hardcore anarchist, political, like ideologues. We were more laid back, like, we just do it our way. We're not going to be organized, but we were organized. And then I noticed that, then I learned about the Discord. When I was there, I learned about Fugazi and Minor Threat and how they had started the Discord house in DC and had a label and all lived there. And all the bands that were touring through would stay there. So I kind of wanted to model it on the Discord house in DC and the Crass house in England. And that was the roots of the Rat House. Only lasted a few years, but man, so many bands stayed there.
Yeah.
And partied there with us. I mean, it was pretty remarkable.
Where did everybody sleep? I know that you were pointing out in the documentary, like the different rooms and stuff where you guys slept who were physically renting it. But when people were crashing there, did they just sleep wherever? Or how did that work?
Well, there was a couch that was really gross. I slept there. It was disgusting. There was French fries in it. Ugh. One time I woke up and there was a French fry stuck on my cheek.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, gross. Well, I had a garden there too. But then some band came through. I think it was Sublime, and they stayed there, and the dog attacked my garden because I had 2 tires around my tomato plants because it keeps the soil warm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the dog grabbed the tires and started ripping it around like this little dog, started whipping
it was a Dalmatian
tire around like it was nothing, like it was a pet toy, like a stuffed animal. And it took the tomatoes were flying everywhere. And I got so mad, I kicked him out and made him leave.
Was that Lou Dog?
Yeah, I guess so.
It's just incredible to hear, the connection to all these bands on the periphery of everything you guys had going on. It must have been incredible. Do you feel
those bands weren't popular yet? I mean, I booked them.
It's the beginning.
Sublime twice, and they came through on Tuesdays, and I couldn't make enough money to pay the sound guy, so I had to pay the sound guy out of my own pocket because no one came. But I liked them. I thought they were cool.
I mean, you were on the ground floor of such a time in musical history.
Yeah.
That's incredible just to hear some of the stories you have.
Yeah.
I hope people find it interesting. And then
I find it interesting. I love it.
It seemed like everywhere we played, we would open or be playing on the same bills with bands that would become huge the next week. But it was also really frustrating. We thought we were better in a lot of ways. We had more experience. We played better. Our songs were more meaningful, we thought. Mia was a better performer. We all tried a lot harder. And Mia was really frustrated at the end too. She's like, people don't get how hard we work, and then these bands that put in zero time get picked up by these major record companies, and overnight they're buying houses and we can't even afford to pay our $800 rent in our house. So it was a struggle. It was really frustrating. And let's see who else opened for us. Everclear opened for us once. Then they got huge. Twice, actually, they played with us, opened for us. And then Beck was another one. He opened for us. Juliana Hatfield from the Throwing Muses. I think we opened for her. Probably bands that are huge that I don't even know. I didn't even recall them playing, that we were playing with them in different places. The Catherine Wheel, have you heard of them? That was a band. Of course, Harvey Danger. They became Death Cab for Cutie.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And all those bands that came like in the early 2000s just looked up to us. They just thought we were the shit. And it was funny because we weren't playing anymore, right? So after 93, kind of people would talk about what our band meant to them, and it was just kind of like lost on it all because we were busy trying to find out who killed Mia. So it was like we never really got to feel like appreciated very much, I think, as the Gits.
That's frustrating because Mia really was an artist, and when you look at her lyrics, like they're very deep. And I think there's a part in the documentary, and I forget who says it, but they say, when you look at Mia's, lyrics, I don't want to interpret that for you. These lyrics can be for anybody to interpret for how it makes, them feel. So they take away from it and the perspective that they receive from the artistry of her lyrics.
Yeah. I mean, the lyrics are, and it's universal. They're universal, right? It's like you can read them and anyone that reads them, I feel like can apply it to their lives. So it almost seems like their lives are inherent in the lyrics, or she's talking about their lives or my life. I thought that about every song she wrote. Like, oh gosh, she wrote that about me. It wasn't about me. It was just about something I could relate to so well.
Is there a song that was most impactful for you?
I don't know that there was really. I remember performances that were very impactful. I mean, I can remember certain specific ones. Others I can't remember at all. And people say I was there and I can't remember. But there was like some of the shows that we did at Antioch were just, when I saw Mia really come out and become a singer and become like a front person, just blew my mind. Like I can't even tell you the story. It's just I think it was too personal to her. But there was one occasion that we had organized a show. It was the last spring before we all left. And we organized a show and we got a pig and roasted this pig in a big pit, which was a huge controversy because it was like very vegetarian school kind of. And,
the liberal arts college.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't eat any of it, but some people did. And it never got done, which is really gross. It was like they didn't make the fire hot enough. But then we would have bands played, but it was the idea of the name of it, Rock and Roast, that we thought was funny. So we did it. And then and we played a gig there, and Mia was having a really hard time, really, really hard time. But she did anyway. And she was on stage singing one of her songs where she just was like crying and like belting out the lyrics in this way that you just like, it was unimaginable how she, like what the emotion that was pouring out of her. And she was barely able to stay up on the stage, but she did. And like, she just took every song and every audience really seriously and really literally, even if it was in like a cornfield in Ohio after pig was being roasted, it was still like it seemed like she looked every single person in the audience in the eye and was singing to every single person every time through every gig. But that time was when I really understood what it meant to put emotion, to put all your heart and soul into the present, like the song, and improvising it or playing it the way with the passion that the lyrics speak of, and listening to the other people in the band and communing with them, and making the song became way more than the sum of the parts. It was just like, oh my God, it's this emotional waterfall that was tearing us apart, but at the same time is this cathartic experience that's going to move past whatever was bugging her or us. And I was crying up there, and we were all crying, and Andy's trying to keep Mia from collapsing on the stage. And it was just like, it wasn't drama. It was just happening, It was not a show in any way. And I don't know what people noticed and what they didn't, but I can't assume that they didn't notice something. But we'd play gigs like that organized. We'd play for like 20 people sometimes, or 100. We didn't care. We would just play the same way. Not be like, oh, there's nobody here. Where are we going to play? We would just rage. And the fewer people, sometimes the harder we would play.
Sometimes those are the best shows because they're more intimate and you feel like you can connect with everyone in the room.
Yeah. Yeah. She did. I didn't feel like I could, but she was able to. And I was the accompanist, I just wanted to accompany her. And so I would play back, play less or more straight, or like when she was singing, and just try to get out of her way musically. And that was my role, I felt.
I feel like that says a lot about the symbiotic relationship you had with her as an artist and as a bandmate. You were able to like be so in tune with one another that she didn't have to tell you, hey, play straight. Hey, pull back on this. You just knew. I think that's amazing to hear.
And that's what, our relationship was such that we knew each other and loved each other a lot. And I think Mia and I did. And in essence, we had a family sort of hot and cold sort of thing. Sometimes I'd be really mad at somebody in the band and they'd be mad at me, I'm sure, all the time, but no one would really talk about it very much. And then when we were on stage, no matter what it was, that just was gone. And we had a job to do, and it didn't matter if somebody was, putting bananas in my shoes at night or whatever happened. So it didn't matter. I mean, just pour them and then put bananas in their shoes the next night. So
yeah, then you're even.
Yeah. So if you're going to pass out, make sure you leave your boots on. You might get your face drawn on for that reason, but you won't get bananas in your shoes.
Can you
remember that when you're on tour?
Can you talk a little bit about, because you guys moved to Seattle in 1989 towards like the end, but you were created in September of 86. So there's this 3 years from when you guys first met at Antioch till you moved. Can you talk a little bit about like the formation of the band and kind of how you guys ended up meeting at Antioch? I know it's not the largest school, but just a little bit of like the foundation of where the Gits kind of came from. Besides,
it's in the documentary, isn't it? Mostly, I mean, that's pretty.
It was just kind of like an organic meeting. I just didn't know if there was some like, where you guys met in a specific way or a specific class or something.
I can't really. It's kind of private, I suppose.
Sure. That's absolutely fine.
How we met, I think, and actually, it's kind of the beginning part of my book, and I'd rather not.
Totally. Cool. We'll read it. We'll read it in the book.
Then you can add an addendum.
For our listeners, though, you are writing a book.
Andy and Mia were second-year students. They were sophomores when Matt and I entered. And Matt and Andy and I all lived on the same floor in a dorm building that was built during the Civil War, this old brick building that had absolutely no rules. So I remember, school started and then Halloween came, right? And in 89, and Halloween, apparently there's this big party that happened in our dorm. And I was like, I hate parties. I don't want to have all these people. And the dean of students is standing at the door, like checking people. I'm like, I was intimidated. And the guy at the door was issuing a stamp on your hand if you pay to get in. It was like $3 to drink all you want. And I hit acid. So like everybody in the place was able to get a free hit of acid. And apparently that had been a tradition for 20 years. And the dean was sitting there watching it. He knew it. He didn't care. So it was kind of like this surreal place with absolutely no rules. As long as you were cool, you didn't hurt anybody, and you didn't use like racist or overtly sexist language and action. So it was kind of like anything goes. That's any rule that's derived from a stupid law, rule, or moray in the country was just like kind of thrown out. And then the laws or rules that mattered were sort of highlighted. So like the sexism, racism, homophobia stuff was just like, taboo, no way, don't with it. You cannot, it's against the law here. Smoking weed, taking acid, taking your doors off the dorm so everyone can each other. Like all that was okay. All that was fine. I'm sure some kids lost their mind and went away screaming. I remember.
Sure.
But like some people were just kind of like, wow, this is like a little utopia.
Freedom from, the confines of what might have been home before that or whatever.
Freedom from every place. It was like a oasis in a way.
A land of
isolated in the middle of nowhere. And it was the only place in the country that had a black police chief. And it was pretty progressive. Dave Chappelle is from that town. You know him?
Yeah.
His cousin's my best friend, one of my best friends from there. And they all grew up in Yellow Springs. So you can imagine how weird and funny and politically bizarre and funny, and controversial he is. That's kind of like
Yeah.
The radical nature of the Yellow Springs. Wow.
That's the vibe. We'll put Dave Chappelle as a town or as a school.
We could call him and interview him. That would be cool, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So
he didn't go there, but his brother was a friend of mine.
Wow. Okay. So I'm hearing that at least Dave Chappelle's brother knew Mia.
No, they all knew Mia. Of course they did. Dave Chappelle did too.
Wow.
His cousin was Mia's best friend, one of Mia's best friends.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I met him. I didn't know who he was. Honestly, I didn't have a TV until the 90s, later 90s, and I didn't know
what
who he
a
was.
small world.
I think one of the parts that kind of made me smile of the documentary was when I think it's either Ben or Mark, or they're both kind of talking about a specific night at Antioch where Mia just jumps up on a table and she began singing like a bluesy song that I wasn't super familiar with when they named it. They called it like a Betty or Bessie Blues or something like that. And did Mia do that kind of stuff a lot? Because I've heard from, when her dad was mentioning and talking about her that sure, Mia, could be reserved, but you put a mic in her hand and you get her up on stage and you can see it. Like she's a powerhouse on stage.
No, I don't think she wouldn't jump on she wouldn't just spontaneously break into song or anything. Not really.
Yeah.
She's pretty shy, even if she'd get drunk, but she wouldn't sing karaoke or be weird. She would just kind of keep to herself. I never heard her really just even sing outside of the band.
Yeah.
Just singing by herself, maybe when she was walking or something. But I think he was just sort of creating a metaphor for, because the guy that said that, Andrew Pollard, he did our record jacket paintings. Mm-hmm. And he's a real great painter and artist. And I think it was just sort of he's referring to her jumping up on stage and singing, when he didn't expect her to be able to sing like that. And then, because we had a band for a while at the same time, a blues band with Mia and Matt and I, and another guy.
That may have been what it was. It was just more metaphorically put than, okay, thank you for explaining that. That makes it make more consistent with who it seemed like Mia was. So that's why I was I got to bring that up because I'm how in the world, what a crazy moment, and he did mention a blues song. So it's probably from that.
I do remember her one time, being drunk and then just there was this huge round table that about 10 people could fit around at the Comet Tavern. And her friend Stephanie was across the table and she crawled across the table and knocked over all the glasses and pitchers everyone was drinking. Just jumped up and started crawling to her and then tackled her friend on the other side of the table, knocked her down on the floor, and they're both screaming and everyone's yelling at me for knocking over their beers. And it was just, there was this giant puddle and these two women wrestling on the floor, the sticky, nasty barroom floor with all this beer everywhere. And he was licking their cheek and her face. And it was what are you doing? You're not a dog. God. Something like that would happen. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But those are the times you don't forget. I mean, what a fun crowd to be around.
Yeah. I think Valerie mentioned a time getting licked on the cheek by Mia too.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, I think so. In the documentary, she mentioned something about that, or in an interview I saw of Valerie. And I'm just she had a silly side. And I just think that's so sweet.
Yeah, she's really funny.
She
didn't write funny stuff though.
Right.
In her journal, she didn't write humorous stuff. She just was. It was just who she was. I mean, she found humor in things and she would sort of act it out. And mostly she would do impressions. She would have accents that she would do that were just really funny.
I can only imagine. That's awesome.
No, you can't. It was she did it really badly though, you see. She thought she was funny. She couldn't do it. So it was just ended up sounding weird, not funny, kind of disturbing.
Yeah. And then sometimes that's what makes it funny because it's so horrible. You're just no.
Yeah, no, oh God, no, stop. Please stop.
Well, thank you for everything you have shared thus far. Is there anything else that you would like, any of the listeners that were able to share this with the world to know about Mia, her artistry, or anything else?
I do have a lot of things I would like people to know about the Gits and Mia and our relationship and how we felt, what we did in the world. And, but I also hope that people would stop focusing on the fact that she was a murder victim and a martyr or whatever she has become and focus on her art and her music, and doing that, making it easier because we're reissuing all our records now in the coming years, and either one at a time or all in a box set, probably starting this year. And then I've written a book, which should, if, with any luck, be out this year, but maybe next year. That anyone that has any questions about who she was and her family and who the Gits were, it's focused on Mia and myself. And a band, but not necessarily I don't go into detail about other people's in the band's private lives, but it focuses on her creativity and how she wrote songs and her process and her humor and her disappointments and her attempts to help other people and attempts to help her, and pretty much the real story that I feel like the Gits represent, as opposed to what happened to Mia. It gives more credence, and we did a lot of those shows, the Unsolved Mysteries, and probably 10 of those shows when we didn't know who did it and we needed to find the person. And I think they worked to some extent by keeping it in the media so that the cops would actually run the DNA evidence when they refused to in the past. And OJ would get off on buckets of blood, right? So no one expected that it would pass muster. No one expected that this guy would get busted. And the case that was the smallest amount of DNA evidence used in the state, maybe the country, to convict someone, the smallest amount. Yep. And it was the first time that something called dentum had been used to extract DNA to convict someone. And dentum is the saliva that accumulates on your teeth. Mm-hmm. And it was taken from blood, from bite marks on our breasts. So that was a landmark decision by the court, and hopefully it could land some other people in prison. And he died last January of COVID. So I don't have to worry about that anymore. The guy that killed her.
Yeah. Yeah. We found that information, but they did not release
that it was COVID.
That it was COVID. They didn't, the only article we found, there hadn't been a statement of what he passed from. But nobody else will ever. I even say in the episode after I mentioned that, like, he will never hurt anybody else ever again. And
people are still suffering though from it, and hopefully the music can make up for it. Yeah, how people feel from the music, and Power was way stronger and more and longer lasting than his, or probably many other singers even.
Yeah, that's what I told our listeners. If you wanna honor her, listen to the music. Listen to her music, read her lyrics. I've kind of been reading some of the songs and just kind of like going through the lyrics. And sometimes I have to read them a couple times. I got to get in that like deep, state of mind. And
in the book, I explained the process of writing all the songs, how he did it on stage, and then what her process was and what they were about. So that's something else that's.
Oh, I can't wait.
I can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope you do. I hope I can get it out.
You let us know, and we'll definitely let our audience know, when it's out as well. Okay,
great. I will.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all of your time, Steve. We know you're a busy guy, so thank you again.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Until our next episode, you know where to find us at the Murder Diaries Pod on TikTok and Instagram, at the murderdiariespodcast.com, and the Murder Diaries Pod Request at gmail.com.
And if you haven't already, go ahead and give us 5 stars. It helps us keep the good content flowing.
And until then,
stay safe. Bye.
Seeking the truth never gets old. Introducing June's Journey, the free-to-play mobile game that will immerse you in a thrilling murder mystery. Join June Parker as she uncovers hidden objects and clues to solve her sister's death in a beautifully illustrated world set in the Roaring 20s. With new chapters added every week, the excitement never ends. Download June's Journey now on your Android or iOS device, or play on PC through Facebook Games.